Yo, what is up? It is your boy Zether, back at it again with a brand new video. This being, what if Deku had a godly dojutsu? And I hope you guys are ready for this series because it's going to be a lot of fun. And on top of that, it's going to be a lot different than my usual videos. So with that being said, I don't want to keep you guys too long. So let's just go ahead and get started. Okay guys, so our story is actually all going to start off when Deku's born. See, he's going to born just like he is in canon, except this time, he's going to have these weird eyes. When the doctors look at Deku, they're going to be like, what's going on? And they're going to proceed to basically say that it must be his quirk. He might have like a little bit of a mutation quirk or something that has to do with his visual prowess or something. As Inko and Hisashi would be looking at him and they would say, huh, that's strange. The strangest thing about it would be that Deku wasn't crying. He wasn't like any normal kid. And this is just how things are going to be. Now, in case you guys are hoping for some weird explanation on how he ends up getting these eyes, there will be no explanation needed, guys. Just bear with that. Anyways, Deku's going to end up growing up pretty much a lot different than any of the other kids. Deku grows up having omnipotent knowledge, and unlike any of the other kids, he grows up mature and wise off rip. Instead of idolizing heroes, he's going to view them in a different light and not admire them or glorify them like the other kids. And instead of being into the dumb things that most kids are into, Deku's basically going to like to, read books and, see the knowledge that humans have acquired over the thousands of years. And of course, he knows everything because, as I said, he's going to have omnipotent knowledge. He's going to know everything. And what these eyes are essentially the Rikugan. These are godly dojutsu, which basically gives him access to everything time. It gives him access to time manipulation. He can slow time infinitely in the way that Gojo does, kind of. He can even use Aries' abilities like rewind. And he can even get like enhanced perception. He's going to have chakra. He's going to be able to use every single nature style. Water walking, obviously. Portals through time and space. Knowledge of all history. It's extremely broken, to say the least. Like, it's gonna be a lot, it's gonna be a lot for him to handle. Anyways, the thing with this dojutsu is that as soon as you acquire it, you kind of have a sort of an understanding of how it works and what it is. Because, well, he was born with it, and after, growing up a couple of years, he would have finally ended up getting used to these eyes. He's going to grow up staying away from many of the other kids, especially people like Bakugo, who think that they're the best, and basically just keeping away from him because he doesn't really feel like he's worth any of his time. And that's funny since he has all the time in the world. Anyways, everything is pretty much just going to be like this, and it's honestly just going to stay this way up until when they're about in, let's say, 4th grade. After Bakugo gets his quirk, he's going to end up trying it with Deku. He's going to walk up to him and ask him, hey, weirdo, why do you never talk to any of us? What's wrong with you? And Deku would just ignore Bakugo. And after that, Bakugo would say, hey, don't you ignore me. Don't you know who I am? I have an explosion quirk. As Deku would just not really give him the time of day. And this is when Bakugo would say, you're so... As he would throw an explosion at Deku's face. And before Bakugo could even make contact with Deku, he would stop in time. And everything around them would stop immediately. As Deku would stand up in front of him and tell him, you're a really interesting person, you know that? You seem to think that you're above everybody and that you know everything. But did you know that if you keep up with that, you're going to be headed towards a very dark path? As Bakugo says, what are you talking about? You don't know me. You don't know anything about me. As Deku would say, oh, but I do. I know everything about you and everybody else. I've seen what can happen with your little attitude if it doesn't get in check anytime soon. As Deku would proceed to hold Bakugo's head, and he would proceed to show him, give him a reality check, essentially showing him what the future is going to hold, and where Bakugo's headed with that attitude of his. As Bakugo would see himself slowly becoming more and more irritable, becoming, less good-hearted, and becoming a villain. Instead of the hero that he once idolized and wanting to become like All Might, he ends up becoming a villain. Working with the League of Villains. As Bakugo would fall to the ground and say, no, as he would just run away from Deku and time would go back to normal. And this This is when Bakugo would finally start changing and getting a little bit of development. See, after seeing that vision from Deku, he thought it was fake, but, he decided that he might as well just stop picking on kids since he doesn't want to go down that route. And he would never end up messing with Deku again. He would end up leaving him alone forever. And after that day, there'd really be nothing that he could do from there on. So we're just going to go ahead and basically just skip on over to the day of the Sludge Villain Day. See, after all those years, Deku would have essentially just ended up getting a perfect grasp over all of his abilities and powers, and instead of basically gaining a bunch of friends, he would kind of just keep to himself, seeing as he doesn't really care too much about other people. He views them as, insignificant and mongrels, I guess you could say. As it's not some sort of superiority complex, but it's kind of like he just doesn't feel like, socializing with people since they're all kind of fake in his eyes. As he's seen the destruction of human beings, but he's also seen the good within them. And he knows that not a lot of people nowadays are good, so that's why he tends to stay away from most. Now, as I said, the day of the Sludge Villain comes around, and this is when the teacher would throw the papers in the air, essentially telling all of the kids that, well, he knows they all want to become heroes, and everybody would proceed to use their quirks. As Bakugo would stand up on the desk, and this time, instead of being a jerk to Deku, when the teacher says, Izuku, you want to go to UA? That would not happen because, well, Izuku never ends up putting in a recommendation to go to UA. And he never really ends up wanting to do that after all. So he just ends up going home, and Bakugo, seeing as he doesn't even see Deku as a potential threat, he would have ended up growing up a lot different, and nobody would have really been there to check Bakugo except for Deku. So Bakugo would have ended up getting a little less of a DICK head because, he doesn't want to get that treatment from Deku again. As well, now we're going to have Deku essentially just walking home, going down the path that he sees himself going down this very day. As he would go by the normal events, and he would proceed to walk past where he knows the Sludge Villain is going to attack him at. And this is when the Sludge Villain would jump at him, as Deku would freeze it, and he would proceed to ask him what he's doing here. As the Sludge Villain would say, "Give me your body, kid," as Deku would say no. As he would proceed to say, "I know why you're like this. Let me help you." As he would put his 5 fingers in front of the Sludge Villain, and he would proceed to tap them in the air. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As he would rewind his hand, and the Sludge Villain would immediately turn back to before it was even sludge. He would revert back to its human form, and as soon as that happens, the Sludge Villain would fall to his knees and begin to look at himself as he begins to basically just go down on all 4 and begin to basically tell Deku he's so thankful. As he would leave the area, and this is when All Might would arrive, as Deku would look at his watch and say, "Right on time." This is when he would look towards All Might, and he would proceed to basically walk around him, as All Might says, "Kid, what are you doing?" As Deku would say, "Looks like you're already injured." As All Might would say, "What are you talking about, kid?" And this is when Deku would say that he knows all about it, not to play any games with him. As All Might would basically just be like, "How did you know?" And this is when Deku would basically, stop time in its tracks. As All Might would say, "What's going on?" And this is when Deku would proceed to show him everything. All of All Might's life and history in front of his eyes. As All Might would see the battle against All For One once again, and he would proceed to get a bit of anger in his eyes. As he would say, "Kid, what are you doing?" As Deku would say, "Don't worry about it. I can help you." As All Might would say, "What are you talking about?" And before he can even continue that sentence, Deku would put his hand on All Might's injury and revert it to before then. As All Might would say, "What? How are you able to do that, kid?" As Deku would proceed to tell him that if he wants, he could even send him back to his prime. So he'll have no need to give his quirk onto anybody else for a long time. As All Might would say, "How did you know about?" As Deku would say, "I know everything. I know everything there is to know about history, the future, the present. I know it all." As All Might would say, "Yeah, just turn me back." As this is when Deku would proceed to essentially look at All Might and say, "It's done." As he would revert All Might to back when he was in his prime, his younger days. And from there, Deku would essentially look at All Might and tell him that he has to get going now. As All Might would say, "Wait!" And before All Might could continue his sentence, Deku would pause time and just basically walk home. As he would basically have it go back to normal, and All Might would say, "Kid," as he would look around and he would be nowhere to be found. As All Might would wonder who that kid was. And this is when Deku would basically just go home and relax. And from there, Deku just basically decides that maybe he should go to UA, seeing as his original counterpart would have done that. As he decides to put in an application to UA because he basically just wants to see how things would play out differently this time. And he wants to go through it, have these experiences. Maybe these people can change. As well, he would proceed to basically just chill for the first 2 months. But this is when All Might would have an interview where people would essentially ask All Might about how he became young again and how he got his prime back. As All Might would open his big mouth and people would end up finding out about a boy with these abilities to rewind time and stop time in itself. As soon as that happens, All Might would send a description and you basically just begin to talk about what that kid looked like. As a police force would basically track down Deku and they would, basically take it down to him. As people would not leave him alone and they would basically bother him, telling him that they want the power, they want to be turned back in time, if he can rewind them back to before they were human, and they would proceed to basically just keep asking him this stuff until Deku just gets sick and tired of it and he just says, you know what, I'm done. As he would proceed to reverse time back to before he even healed All Might, and after he's done, he would tell All Might to stay quiet about what had just happened. Tell people that he just woke up like this and people will have no reason to doubt him. As he would proceed to walk off, this time instead of teleporting away, and All Might would just be standing there wondering what that power's kids are. As this is when Deku would proceed to essentially just chill for the remainder of the 10 months. And he would proceed to basically just chill out, honestly. He would go inside one of his time barriers, kind of like the hyperbolic time chamber, and actually end up, going back towards history and seeing how ninjas used to fight back in the day. Seeing, different alternative realities, and he would see the world of the ninjas. And he would actually be very attracted to a certain somebody by the name of Madara Uchiha, who wished to have people live in their perfect world. As Deku would, see that idea and see that it was very twisted with good intentions. As he would see the way that Madara fights, and he would end up spending about 1 day in real life's time training to copy every single one of Madara's moves. And seeing as it's a Dojutsu and it's a godly one, you know what the Sharingan could do, where it could basically copy Rock Lee's Taijutsu? Yeah, he did that, except in seconds. In literal seconds. Not even with his time and anything. No, he literally copied it in 1 second. As this is when we're just going to basically skip on over to the day of the entrance exam. As Deku would basically walk on in there, and instead of bumping into Uraraka, he would actually... No. Instead of doing, just walking in there, he would end up purposefully, dropping himself and basically tripping, as Uraraka would save him just like in canon, and Deku would say, wow, looks like he still did it. As Uraraka would say, what? As Deku would say, oh, it's nothing. He would just thank Uraraka for it, and he'd basically walk inside to take the exam. As Deku would essentially just proceed to answer all of the questions perfectly, and even correct some of the questions, the phrasing that they had, as some of them were actually trick questions, and he actually ended up doing even those perfectly. As Nezu would be impressed by that kid's scores, wanting to know who that kid is, and thinking that kid must, if he gets even 10 points, he's going to put him in UA. As this is when we would have Deku essentially just being outside, as we would have him just honestly just standing there with earbuds in and a weird cloak looking thing. As this is when Ida would actually walk up to Deku and ask him what's he doing here so soon, as Deku would tell him that he passed the test and it was very easy. As Ida would say, what? Easy? That test was incredibly difficult. As Deku would say, no, it was pretty easy. As this is when they would continue to talk for a little bit, and Deku would basically tell him that he wants to concentrate. As Ida would understand and walk away, and he would stay by the front. As this is when, we would have President Mike basically say, there's no countdowns in a real battle. Go, go, go. As we would have Deku essentially just standing there, as he would hold his hand out right as everybody's running towards robots, and he would proceed to basically flick. As in that snap, oh no, not a flick, but he would snap his fingers, and as soon as he does that, every single robot within the UA facility and school would turn into dust. As Nezu would say, what? How did he do that? As every single one of the teachers would be wondering how that kid did that. And this is when All Might would come in out of nowhere asking where the robots went. As he would see the boy who turned him back, and he would say, it can't be. As he would see what he had done, and Nezu would go onto the speaker saying, kid, you destroyed everything. I guess the rest of the people have to come back another day. as Deku would look towards the speaker where the noise is coming from, and he would say there's no need. As he would turn his hand clockwise, and he would reverse them back to before they were destroyed. As Nezu would just be extremely shocked, and this is when Deku would essentially just proceed to fly on over to the top of a roof, as he would essentially just wait for the 0 pointer to come and wait for Araka to get hurt, as he would essentially go on up to her and heal her before she even got hurt, and he would proceed to basically have point his fingers right at the robot, as he would turn it into metal scraps, and he would begin to pretty much crush the robot with nothing but his hand movements, as the robot would begin to turn itself inside out, and it would crush, turning into nothingness, as Nezu would see what had just happened, and he would be extremely impressed. This kid is... It's impossible what he can do. As for the next couple of days, Deku would basically just go home and begin to chill out at his house, as he would get letters upon letters of people basically asking him what his quirk is, and when he gets the little message by All Might would basically just ask him if he could meet him by Dagoma Beach, as Deku would say he can, and he would end up going over there 2 days from now, as school is going to be that very day, but just later on in the morning, as he would end up going to where All Might asked him to meet, and he would be right on time, with All Might arriving there about 1 minute late, with Deku saying you're late, and All Might saying it was just a minute, as Deku would say that 1 minute, okay, I guess, as he would basically go back to before All Might was late, and he would have him speed up, as he would arrive there at perfect time. And this is when Deku would proceed to essentially tell All Might that 1 minute can be everything in the grand scheme of things. As All Might would say, okay kid, as he would proceed to basically ask him what his quirk is. As Deku would say that he doesn't have a quirk. He doesn't have a power. What he has are his eyes. As All Might would stare at his eyes, and he would see the same pattern that you guys can see on the thumbnail. The same image of Izuku that you guys can see on screen right now. As we would just have Deku essentially just standing there, and we would have All Might essentially just asking, what those eyes can do. As Deku would explain all of the eyes' abilities, and All Might would say that power it's godly. As Deku would say that these eyes were gifted from the gods themselves, as he is the chosen one, the one to fix humanity. As All Might would say, what are you talking about? As Deku would just look towards him and tell him he wouldn't understand, that he's not ready for that type of stuff yet. As we would then have Deku essentially just basically going off on his own, as All Might would just be standing there with all of the questions that he previously had, as Deku would tell him not to think too hard about it. As this is when he would arrive to class, and the girl who he had saved previously, Uraraka, would walk up to him, and she would say, hey, thank you for saving me back there. As Deku would say it was no problem, and he would tell her that she should probably sit down, seeing as the teacher's about to stand up. And she would say, what teacher? As she would look back, and this is when Aizawa would say, if you guys are here to make friends, I suggest you leave now, telling them to essentially go outside, as Deku would basically walk out there and go ahead and get changed, just like any of the other people. Except he would actually walk out there first, and not exactly have Aizawa having to tell him anything that what he has to do. As Deku would basically look towards Aizawa, and this is when he would basically just get changed in the fitting room. As all of the people standing there would basically be like, whoa, dude, how are you so ripped? As Deku would be built like a Greek god. I'm just going to say that. He's going to be built lean, muscular, and shredded. That's essentially how Deku's built. And essentially what he looks like is going to be in the thumbnail. Just about, he's going to be taller than usual. That's all I'm going to say. Anyways, we would then have them all go outside, and this is when Aizawa would toss the ball over to Deku, telling him to throw it as far as he can. And as soon as that happens, Deku would smile, saying, alright, this is a pretty easy task to do, as he would stop time and have nobody except for himself and Aizawa being able to move in this time that he basically stopped. As he would essentially hold the ball into the air, and the ball would essentially stop floating, as he would take the gravity off of it and flick his finger straight at the ball, as the ball would go shooting into orbit, as Aizawa would see what had just happened, as the rest of the class would just see Deku flicking a ball, and it would go into outer space, as everybody would see what had just happened, and they would be surprised and shocked, as Bakugo's mouth would drop to the floor, and he would say, I didn't know he had this type of power. As we would then have him looking towards Aizawa, and Aizawa would say, he's a god. As We would then have him going through the rest of the exams, where he would proceed to basically obliterate every event. He would get the greatest score of all time in the race. He would destroy the grip strength test, the push-up, the side-to-side steps. By the end of everything, Aizawa would look at Aizawa as a drop of sweat would fall down his face, as he would say, "This kid is not normal." As he would just drop the machine and everybody would be staring at Deku. As Deku would say that if this is all for today, then he's going to be heading home. As people would basically try to stop Deku, but before they can, he would have teleported off, creating a portal to go back to his house. And this is where we're actually going to be ending it off, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, as it's definitely a lot of fun to make. We're going to basically be having a God Deku. And if you guys are wanting the next part, I suggest you guys go down below I suggest you guys go down below and smash that like button, as well as hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications to be informed on when I'm going to be posting the second part to this What If. And go ahead and leave a comment down below letting me know what you guys want me to do with his power. Give me some suggestions and ideas on where I should take the story, and honestly, just let me know what you guys thought and liked. After this video, you guys are probably going to be seeing little time cards and stamps of videos that are going to be here for you guys to watch. In case you guys don't like any of those, just go ahead and click on the channel and go browse some of my content, seeing as if you guys enjoyed this video, you'll most likely love any of my other videos. So with that being said, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed, and it has been your boy Zether, and I am out. Peace.